some of the myths that we think about people that are overweight, that they made themselves fat, that they want to be fat, that they're lazy, that they're eating way too much, that they don't do any exercise whatsoever. And some of the myths that overweight people think about thin people is that they must all really enjoy exercise. They're genetically gifted, that it's easy for them to stay thin. Okay guys, welcome back. I'm going to talk a bit today about some of the myths that surround people that are overweight from the perspective of people that are at a healthy weight. And I'm going to take a look at some of the myths that people that are overweight believe to be true about people that are of healthy weight. I should just make it clear as well, you know, I've been on both sides of this fence. I've been very overweight in periods of my life, and I've been in excellent shape in periods of my life. You know, I've been down to sort of 5% body fat for a bodybuilding competition. I've been powerlifting at about 10 to 12% body fat, and I've also had a 40 plus inch waist and been incredibly overweight and incredibly unfit. The first kind of myth that I want to talk about is that anyone who's overweight, they made themselves fat. It was like some sort of conscious choice on their part. You know, I hear that a lot. Well, they could have decided any time to stop doing that. And, you know, if only life was so simple. So becoming overweight is a gradual process. You know, it's not like you eat a load of food one week and then suddenly you're massively overweight and then you don't eat any food the next week and you can magically turn back thin again. You know, if it was that easy, people would not be overweight in general, or they might be for a very short period of time. But this happens over time, and you have to take into account the psychology that goes along with it. So you have someone that's slightly overeating, they may have a really sedentary job, you know, they're not getting enough exercise, and not everyone has huge amounts of knowledge about health and diet and exercise. You know, some people are busy working and trying to pay the bills, they have very stressful lives, so they haven't got time to sit there researching on YouTube about all this stuff like you might. And those people over time are eating slowly an overabundance of calories. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, and generally speaking, most people that get overweight, it isn't a massive gain, you know, in a short period of time. It happens over time, and you notice it. You know, I noticed it when it happened to me, but you're not feeling good about yourself, you know, because you're sedentary, you're not doing much, you might have some issues going on in your life, you feel pretty awful about yourself, and as you get fatter, you feel worse about yourself, and you look in the mirror, you're obviously not seeing what you feel is a desirable image looking back at you, and that feeling that you get, you know, that sort of negative feeling towards yourself, it's almost in a way like kind of self-harming, that of course you should stop doing that to yourself, and you should make some really positive decisions. But food is very addictive. It makes you feel good when you eat it. It's comforting. So if you feel really awful, then generally speaking, you're going to turn to the thing that you generally use for comfort. And, you know, it's a bit akin to saying that, you know, all smokers have chosen to be addicted to nicotine. Well, they chose to start smoking, but they probably didn't make a choice to actually become addicted to nicotine. The same as most drug addicts wouldn't have made a choice to become addicts. They just fancied taking some drugs and seeing what it felt like. And food is horrendously addictive. You know, that companies pay huge amounts of money to ensure that what we eat is very appealing to us. We're hardwired to be, you know, find that kind of high calorie food incredibly irresistible. So if you've got someone who's feeling really down about themselves and there's nothing, they haven't got the knowledge and experience to kind of do much about that, they're just going to seek out comfort, and that's going to continue and continue, and you don't know what's happening in their life, how they're feeling about other issues going on. And over time that gets worse and worse until it becomes almost a situation that they've gone so far down that road they feel like there's no easy way out of it. And if there's no easy way out of being very overweight, all you've got left is to just comfort yourself and turn to what you are enjoying, which is generally food that's very convenient to prepare and very high in calories, and it gives you that quick dopamine hit. So this is something that is complex and happens over a long period of time. This is not an overnight situation that people have just simply chosen. So the next myth, that anyone who's overweight just eats absolutely loads, they must be eating tons. Well, they're certainly eating more than they need to be eating in terms of their daily calories that are required. But one of the hypocritical things I see here, I've seen a lot of lean people that are, easily sort of in the athletic category. And those people are highly critical, saying, oh God, fat people eat way too much, should just eat less. There's plenty of lean people that will eat junk food, that will eat too many calories, and they can kind of get away with it because they might have a very active job, they might work in a manual job, and they might have a very fast metabolism, they might have good genetics, and it's unfair, but that's life. Life's unfair, but some people can get away with eating that, and it's a real shame that they just assume that these overweight people must all be absolutely eating a ton more than they actually need. It doesn't have to be huge amounts of food that they're eating, and sometimes it's just down to people's naivety that they don't even realise, some of the food groups they're consuming have quite high calories in them, especially when food companies are so sly in the way that they package food, and they, label yogurts as being ultra healthy and say there's zero fat in this yogurt, but of course they don't tell you it's absolutely rammed full of sugar, which is still high in calories, or that they're labeling cereal bars as like healthy options, when in fact those cereal bars are reasonably high in calories, but worse still, they're spiking your insulin levels through the roof with simple carbohydrates that are heavily processed. And there's so much misleading information out there. The food companies are spending the most amount of money on targeting people with foods that seem to be, good for you, or are going to somehow help you lose weight, but are actually just absolute junk. So, it's again a complex issue. It's not just a case of these people are eating 20 cream cakes a day and 10 meals or whatever. Some of these people are maybe eating one meal a day, but they're eating all the wrong things and they're completely sedentary. So they may not have a huge diet going on, but if they're not burning any calories at all, and what they eat in that 2 hour period a day is 2,500 calories, and they're only burning 2,000, then they're going to put on weight over time. And it can even be things like drinking high calorie drinks that maybe they haven't even considered. The liquid intake that they've got is also contributing. People having alcoholic drinks, I've heard loads of people say, well, I consume wine, but that's hardly got any calories in it. Well, incorrect. Wine's got plenty of calories in it, and it's certainly going to spike your insulin levels through the roof as well. So there's all kinds of reasons why people get overweight. It's not because necessarily they're eating 3 wheelbarrows full of food. So the next misconception, I think, is that all overweight people are just simply just lazy people. And again, it's more complex than that. Like everything in life, these generalizations, they rarely bear out. There may be some truth in it that people that are leaner probably are moving around more, but that isn't always a personal choice. You know, that may not be because the overweight person is lazy. That could be that they've got some health issues that are preventing them from moving around more. One that's very common is that when you're overweight, it's actually incredibly uncomfortable to go and do exercise, because generally exercise is out in the public, and most people, I know I did, most people that are overweight are not particularly proud of the fact that they're overweight. So suddenly you've got to go outside and go jogging, and you know that people are going to be looking at you and kind of smirking to themselves, and you're wobbling down the road. You know, it's not a pleasant image for us to have in our heads when we have to go and do that. And it's difficult. You have to have quite a high level of self-confidence to get yourself out there, to walk into a gym when you're very overweight and have all the people turn around and look at you, or so you think. You know, I did a video on this before, and actually people in gyms are pretty good. They're not particularly judgmental, but in your mind you're still thinking to yourself, people are going to judge me, you know, when I walk in these places. So that's quite a big hurdle to get over. So you've got that psychological thing. And not only that, exercise when you're very overweight is horrible. You know, like the first month or so that I got back into exercising when I was really out of shape, it wasn't nice. You know, it's not like the people on Instagram talk about, oh, I felt so good and I woke up buzzing every morning. You know, you wake up aching, your joints hurt, your muscles hurt, exercising itself makes you really out of breath, and it just is not a very pleasant feeling, because your body doesn't want to change. You know, we go back to this statement about homeostasis. The body doesn't want you to burn calories doing lots of exercise unless you've got a big adrenaline rush on because you're being, you know, chased down by something, or you're in the middle of a fight or something like that, in which case the body is hardwired to suddenly make you run or make you be very physically active because of this huge hormone release. But the rest of the time in our lives, it's actually quite difficult to do exercise. You know, most of us that do cardio know, like, the first 5 to 10 minutes of cardio, it isn't a pleasant experience. It's the body grows used to it, and you kind of get into a rhythm, but that first 5 or 10 minutes is horrible. And when you're very overweight, the whole exercise time is horrible. You know, the whole hour that you're doing that day does not feel nice. So I would say that, you know, you couldn't sum that up by just saying that people are lazy. There's psychological reasons and there's physiological reasons as to why people would find it far more difficult to exercise when they're very overweight. That all fat people are jolly and they're quite happy, you know, being overweight, and they're always having a laugh. Well, there is some truth in that, and that was certainly the case for me. You know, being an overweight child, you quickly learnt at school that other children were quite mean, and you know, they would quickly point out that you were fat and call you various different names. You also quickly worked out that you weren't maybe the most attractive person in the world to be, you know, picked by the cool groups of friends that were there. So you would want to be in the peer groups that were fashionable and trendy, but they may not want you to be in that because you didn't kind of look right. You might not be picked out as a potential boyfriend or girlfriend because you're very overweight, and people at younger ages tend to be very sort of looks based in terms of who they're going to pick for a potential partner. So what's the obvious way around that? Well, of course, it's to develop a sense of humour, to become a bit of a clown, you know, to make a joke out of everything, and especially to make a joke out of yourself, you know, to have some self-depreciating humour, so that when people say hurtful things about you, it's easy to take the sting out of that by hurting yourself first. You know, if you tell some jokes about yourself and you being fat, then what's the point in the bullies saying things, because you've already done it, and you can say some jokes that are kind of controlled, and you have that control over what you're saying about yourself. Whereas if you just let the bullies run rampant, they might say some really, really hurtful things. And, you know, abuse always sounds worse coming from other people. So that's kind of where I think the self-depreciation bit comes in. But I was that guy. I was a jolly, overweight kid at school, always trying to make people laugh and, you know, fooling around. And that, in a way, affected my education in a negative way, because instead of concentrating on doing really well at school, I was too wound up with, you know, trying to make people laugh and have a fun time. And unfortunately, you know, that probably negatively impacted on what I was taking away from the lessons. It works both ways. There's plenty of myths that people that are overweight generally think about lean people. One of them is just all lean people are just lucky. They were just born like that. You know, life's unfair. Why couldn't I have been born like that? That isn't the case. There are some people that are born with incredibly good genetics, but I must say they are a rarity. That most people that are in good, lean, athletic shape are actually people that are taking personal responsibility for their diet and for their exercise regime. So they've come to a realization that if they overeat and they don't move around enough, that they're going to put on weight, and for them that is something that they don't want to be doing. You know, they don't like the idea of that, so they purposely instill rules and regulations for themselves, you know, that they might limit themselves to eating junk food only once a week or something like that, and they tell themselves that they're going to go to the gym once every day, and that's how they stay lean. So not everyone's lucky. You know, I certainly wasn't lucky. I have to work really, really hard to maintain a lean physique. What you will find, the unfair part of that is I probably have to work harder than someone who's genetically gifted, but that's not a problem. You know, I'm not going to dwell on how unfair life is about that. It just remains that I have to work a bit harder than they do. But equally, there will be people that are very lean that have to work really hard to put on muscle, and they have to work twice as hard as I do to do that. So, you know, we've all got our pluses and minuses. If you're predisposed to be quite overweight, you might find if you start going down the gym that you can easily put on some muscle tissue. You're that kind of body type that adapts easily to lifting weights, and you know, then it's going to take you a bit longer to get the fat off, you know, to get lean. But, you know, it's you sort of, it's pros and cons. You take the good with the bad, you roll with the punches. So it's certainly not the case that all lean people are just genetically gifted. So I met a lot of overweight people that assume that all people that are in athletic shape, they just love exercise, man. They just love doing exercise, and you know, that's why they're in good shape. It's just a side effect of the fact they love exercise. And there are people that do love exercise, but you have to learn to love it over a period of time. You know, it's a slow relationship. You know, to fall in love with cardio, man, that is a slow burn, I tell you. And I'll get it out here. I hate doing cardio. I absolutely hate doing cardio. You know, cardio is boring. It's unpleasant. It doesn't feel nice. And I have strategies to help me do the cardio because my body and my brain do not want to do cardio. You know, that's the bottom line, is I hate doing it. So we are blessed that we have phones with Netflix on and Amazon Prime and all this kind of thing. So when I'm doing cardio, I put my phone on, I watch something cool on YouTube, or I put on a series, or I listen to an audio book, or I listen to music that's really upbeat, that gets me really pumped, and I'm, you know, feeling good about myself. I think of positive things. I think of winning the lottery or something fun like that, and that's how I get through a cardio session. And I also gamify that situation. So like gamification is a really positive thing if you use it in the right way. So when it becomes negative, it's like why do people sit there for like 9.5 hours a day playing Bubble Bobble or all these like silly games on their phones? Because they're not really getting anything out of it, are they? They never actually get like a real prize. They just get to the next level. I'm on level 27, I'm on level 28. Well, so what? Why would human beings do that? And it's this gamification thing, is that we're hardwired to kind of aspire to get to the next level, to do a bit better than we did before. And there's something within all of us that really enjoys that, and that little bit of praise you get at the end. At the end of the level, well done, you've achieved the next level, here's some gold coins or whatever it does on the computer screen. And you can do that to yourself. So one of the ways that I kind of get more into cardio, and certainly with the weights in the gym, is that I remember what I did. You might want to write it down, but I remember like the time that I did it in, or the weight that I was lifting, and then I set myself a bit of a challenge and think, right, next week that's going to be a bit better. And it's surprising how quick you kind of get into that buzz of wanting to better yourself. And that's one of the reasons that things like Peloton and like some of the cycling apps have really taken off, because they've harnessed this gamification strategy, that they put up leaderboards, so they've got you on there and you're competing against a load of other people. And you can look at that every week, and you start moving up the leaderboard. It makes you feel good about yourself. It's giving you that little virtual pat on the head to say, well done, good boy, good girl. And people love that, so utilize that for yourself. But certainly not the case that all lean people just happen to love exercise. We have to seek out ways to learn to love exercise. It's a different thing than just being born to love it. So one of the other things that I've heard overweight people say about thinner people is that, well, they just don't like their food. They're just not people that are into food. Look, all human beings like food. We're all hardwired to seek out high calorie meals. We have been for thousands of years. That's how we survived back in the times before we had an abundance of food like we do now, and I could just go and open a fridge and get what I wanted out of it. Before that happened, if you found some honey, or you found a bush with loads of berries on, or whatever it was, you would gorge on that, because you didn't know where the next meal was coming from for a week or however long it was. Or you might spend a load of calories, seeking out something, hunting down an animal, whatever it was. You would then gorge on whatever you had there, because again, you couldn't refrigerate it, you couldn't keep that food for long periods of time, it would just go off. There were predators wandering around that wanted to take that food off you. So it was a bit like prison mentality. The food gets put in front of you, you're going to eat it all, because otherwise you're probably going to lose it. That's still hardwired into us. So believe, all human beings love high calorie food, and you only have to look at the companies that make this junk food. It's a multi-billion-dollar worldwide industry. If it wasn't for the fact that all human beings really love junk food, none of these big companies would be involved in it. And they spend millions and millions and millions of pounds every month on marketing this stuff to us and developing new types of junk food with significantly more calories in, or that taste significantly better to us, to try and get us addicted to it. So human beings will always love high calorie meals, and the only difference is that lean people realize that the meals are very high calorie, and they've again set these regulations for themselves that they're only going to partake in that for X amount of time per month. Or they may have other sort of self-regulation where they say, I'm not going to eat any junk food at all, I'm going to eat a whole food diet, I'm going to cook all my own food, I don't agree with the junk food industry. Or they may be vegan, or whatever it is. We've all got our own sets of sort of restrictions that we put in place. But you really have to sit down and think about that, is how you're going to be responsible and put those restrictions upon yourself. Because anyone that sort of just tells themselves, oh, I'm just going to eat a bit healthier and leave it in that sort of loose generic term, you won't. You will default to eating a bunch of rubbish because that's what you really want to do. That's what I want to do right now. If there was like loads of cheesecakes in there, you know, I'd be thinking about them and craving them because cheesecakes are really nice. So set yourself, you know, some actual regulation behind your diet, and understand that, you know, certainly all lean people love that food just as much, and they have set regulation, and that's why they're able to remain lean most of the time. So I just want to summarize really. I hope by now we've realized that basically we're all the same. You know, we're all human beings, whether you're overweight, whether you're underweight, whether you're at perfect weight. We all have the same thoughts, the same emotions. We all feel anxiety. We all feel ashamed sometimes. We all feel confident sometimes. We feel happy. We feel depressed. You know, everyone's the same. And you're never going to get people to listen to what you're saying about, you know, healthy options, good food choices, good exercise choices, by shaming them and shouting at them. And that's one of the things that I recognise as being very wrong at the moment. I'm not a big fan of the body positivity movement, which seems to seek to glamorise unhealthy choices and make people feel that they're okay with that. You know, I don't think that's a positive step. If there are a very small percentage of people that want to be overweight because that's what they feel is good for them and beautiful, then fair enough. I'm not complaining about that, but I know that most people don't want that. Most people settle for what they're referring to in body positivity. They're kind of settling because they think to themselves, I'm never going to be able to achieve my perfect body, so I'm just going to have to fall in love with the body that I've got here. And that isn't the case. You can achieve whatever body you want. This myth that overweight people have, that they're not genetically gifted, so they're never going to get as lean as they want. You can have visible abs if you want them. You can have a really athletic physique if you want it. You can be a good sports performer if you want to. You have to take the responsibility and make those choices, but those things can be done. I'm absolutely 100% guaranteeing you that. But we have to stop shaming people, and you know, that goes both ways, whether that's overweight people sort of shaming thinner people as if oh well, they're just blessed and lucky, and you know, sort of treating them as if they're not making any effort whatsoever. But the same with people that are lean. If you're making derogatory comments about people being overweight and calling them lazy and that they're not being bothered and they don't care, you know, that's completely wrong as well. You just need to put yourself into the other person's shoes and try and understand where they're coming from. You know, no one ever made any positive changes in their life because someone shouted abuse at them. And that has completely the opposite effect on me. You know, if someone starts shouting abuse at me, I'm certainly not going to think, oh right, I'm going to make some positive changes in my life. It's going to make me feel horrible, and I'm just going to revert back to type, and you're going to go for this sort of almost self-harming type behaviour a lot of the time. Or you're just going to think, no mate, I'm not going to do what you say. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to listen. You know, and you see that, like, if you ran up to a smoker and shouted abuse at a smoker to stop smoking, they're probably going to smoke like 2 more packs of cigarettes than they did before, just because they're going to want to put the fingers up at you, you know, and kind of get you to mind your own business. And that's no different for anyone else in this situation. So we all just need to be a bit more considerate of each other, support each other. If you know someone that wants to lose weight, offer them some help, take them down the gym, offer to go with them to a sports thing or whatever. You know, understand that they're probably not overly keen on, you know, going and trying these things for the first time on their own, and you might be surprised. You know, they might take you up on it, and you can kind of go on that journey together and support one another. And equally, if someone doesn't want to do that, it's not worth giving them a hard time about. They're going to come to their own conclusions, and hopefully if you love them and make them understand that they're appreciated and they're a great person, and you know they're a member of your family or one of your friendship groups, that's going to be the way to get them to kind of see that positive change is worthwhile. It's not going to be you just continually nagging them. That won't help at all. Well, a bit of an esoteric discussion there, guys, but I hope that gives you some food for thought. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch up with you next time.